You're back with the Irish NFL Show. Our Radio Road coverage continues in association with Dunes and Drams. Discover Ireland beyond the game. We're joined by someone who's provided some great coverage for us in the past, Carmen Vitali of Fox Sports, who's done some great NFC North analysis for us. So, as you can see, Carmen is between myself and Kieran. She's the person keeping the peace.
I'm Switzerland.
Between the Bears and Packers factions. Carmen, we had a lot of fun in the NFC North this year.
So much fun. And, going into the season, I knew it was going to be the case, right? And honestly, I think that towards the end, with the injuries to the Lions, it tapered off, and whatever it was that happened in Minnesota, it didn't actually live up to maybe as tough of a division as I thought it would be. But the Bears and Packers, this rivalry being completely renewed and reborn is such a welcome, fresh breath of air. Is it really? No, it really is. Not for you, probably. Oh my gosh, all the Packers fans have just been like the crash out online, where I'm like, what do you think Bears fans have been going through for the last 30 years? As someone who grew up in Chicago, watching this rivalry very intently, it hasn't been a rivalry.
Yeah, no, it is great fun. I mean, There has been a lack of a rivalry. We talked an awful lot about Aaron Rodgers' ownership of the Bears and everything like that. But it's not as fun to watch, is it? Like, I mean, the Ben Johnson, Matt LaFleur, you're here for all of that, aren't you, for the next couple of years? And I hope that spice continues to spice up a bit.
I have a petty little heart. I am motivated by pettiness. I am motivated by spite. And that is why Ben Johnson is like my spirit animal. I started covering him, obviously, when he started as the offensive coordinator in Detroit. That was my first year covering the NFC North. And I loved him for that reason, because that was apparent even as an offensive coordinator, as an offensive play caller, where he would find not only the pettiness in the narratives, but he would find pettiness on the field in the sense that he would reward players for, like, if they were going against their former team, or if something was happening that week, he would build in packages for these guys to make sure that they were featured, or they got to partake in that kind of pettiness. And he's brought that attitude and that physicality to the Bears, to this rivalry. And I, for one, love it. Like, I know that the coaching, ranks it's a brotherhood, you're one of 32, this, that, the other. I love the cold handshake. I love calling Matt LaFleur out. I love saying, I want to beat him twice a year. I love beating him twice a year.
I love Sean McVay getting involved as well, backing up his boy.
Yes. Well, and now you're going to get Mike LaFleur involved because he's now the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. So I think Ben's a little outnumbered, but he's not scared. No, so I adore that about him, and I love it for the Chicago Bears.
You mentioned the Lions at the start and the injuries and the rebuilds. Quiet rebuild, I guess, that's ongoing there. That's been an interesting storyline to watch. It's been very much overshadowed by the Bears-Packers rivalry and the renewal of same this year. But I wonder, what's your take on where the Lions go from here? In a really negative scenario, you're wondering, has the window closed?
Yes.
But I don't think Dan Campbell is going to accept that.
I keep thinking about, I was at the game in San Francisco, out here, in fact, at Santa Clara, I suppose, the NFC Championship game a couple years ago with Lions, Niners. And I keep thinking back to what Dan Campbell said to us that day, which was, it is so hard to get back here. We cannot count on getting back here. And that's proved to be true. And it's not for a lack of trying. And that's the most heartbreaking part of all of it, is I think that Brad Holmes is one of the best GMs in the league, the way that he keeps this roster stacked and the moves that he's made, and especially in the draft. I mean, they get so much impact from their draft classes. And I think he's a really good evaluator of talent, but the great equalizer in the NFL are these injuries, and they just can't seem to stay out of the blue tent, especially in the secondary, which has been their Achilles heel for the last couple of seasons. So where they go from here, all you can do is try to, again, insulate that unit as much as possible. And they're going to have some decisions to make as far as the contracts that are due, the guys they have to pay, this, that, the other. I trust Brad Holmes to do it, but you just hope that they can stay healthy, because when they're healthy, they're such a good team.
A lot you can put down to injuries, but how vital is the departure of the coaches as well, the coordinators? Because we talk about this a lot on the show. It's a bit of a bone of contention for me. I mean, you can't fault a guy for moving on, for taking a promotion to head coach, but you'd love some kind of a system in place where if you're building something special, as they were with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, you just want to hold on to it for, give it enough time to brew it. Like, does it really have to be win now while we have the chance? Because the team is going to be broken up.
It's funny because, I mean, the NFL is good work is rewarded rewarded with more work or a promotion. And so you're never going to be able to insulate your guys from that if they're doing well, right? And the good news is for Detroit, I mean, no one was ever going to be immune to that kind of attrition, but Calvin Shepard has been groomed essentially by Aaron Glenn for this role. He was always going to be a DC, whether it was going to be in Detroit or whether it was going to be elsewhere. And he has had that locker room. And I think that was very apparent even when they were suffering all of those injuries, that the unit still stayed together and they still played hard. And that's something that Dan Campbell's very good at, something that Shep is really, really good at. The offensive coordinator position, I mean, obviously you saw what Pete Johnson was able to do in Chicago, and that has to sting. So there has to be something there that, you know, you get they have somebody else in there now. And I really do think that you have Jared Goff, who's kind of your constant on that offensive side, but what you really need to make sure is that you have guys waiting in the wings in the way they did on the defensive side of the ball. It's just hard to do it on both sides of the ball at all times. So hopefully they'll find some stability there this year. And, you know, they're not losing anybody major that they would have really liked to have kept, I don't think. So I'm cautiously optimistic for the Lions going forward, but it's maybe also wishful thinking just because I love them as a team. I love them as a franchise. You really are so much fun. I really am Switzerland. I like all of these teams in the NFC North in particular. Ask me about others. Actually, no, there's a lot of teams I like. I'm not I don't have a team because I feel like they're all my team at this point.
We spent a lot of time talking this week about a fascinating and rapidly revolving coaching carousel and also about Sam Darnold. And those two storylines intersect in a really intriguing way in Minnesota, right? Were you surprised to see Kwesi Adofo-Mensah? Did he pay the price for Sam Darnold's success having left the building because of what they ended up with on the back end?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think what we're seeing, and it's not just the case in Minnesota, but we're seeing a lot of reactionary decisions being made by ownership, right? And I think that there was a justification to have let Kwesi Adofo-Mensah go. What there wasn't a justification for, in my mind, was the timing of all of it, because he was at the Senior Bowl for Minnesota, and it just kind of it seemed so reactionary to Sam Darnold making the Super Bowl and then realizing that was a mistake to let him walk out the door, which hindsight is always 20/20, right? I think that decision when it was made was still the right decision because you had invested so much in JJ McCarthy when it comes to draft capital, and you have the best developer of quarterbacks in Kevin O'Connell. You had to make that decision, I feel like. And now the draft classes that he's brought in, and there's a couple of other moves and contracts that he hasn't gotten out of that I think could have warranted the departure. The timing just reeked of, we have to see Sam Darnold in the Super Bowl now. Somebody's head has to roll. And I mean, that was the case in Buffalo with Sean McDermott. I mean, Terry Pegula came out and said the decision was made when I saw Josh Allen crying in the locker room after the Denver loss. And you're like, how do you make these incredible decisions on the franchise without having a plan in place? Because it was such a snap decision. That, to me, we've seen a lot of that this year. And unfortunately, Minnesota is one of the ones that's paying
to your
price.
point, when you look at the franchises that succeed and are consistently successful, they don't make decisions like that.
No.
There were times in the season where I was questioning whether it was the right or wrong move, or would be the right or wrong move to stick with Matt LaFleur again in Green Bay.
I think that was a fair.
I've been quite critical of his decision making in key moments and his. The way I suppose he kind of crawls into a shell a little bit. He doesn't give off the confidence that a Ben Johnson does in those key moments. I mean, in those two losses to the Bears, you were sitting there watching them saying, here come the Bears. I mean, this is, you couldn't see any other outcome, even when the Packers were still a couple of scores up and the Bears started rolling. I've also been highly critical of their loyalty to a fault in terms of their special teams and keeping on Rich Bisaccia.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the leadership structure, the management structure there, and coaching structure in Green Bay? By the way, I do feel now that it was the right decision to keep Matt LaFleur, given the way things panned out.
Yes, absolutely.
You as you said, you need to have a plan. You need to have a succession plan.
Yes.
And I don't think there was a Ben Johnson out there that they could have gone and got this season. Is it a case of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result?
Yeah, I mean, Matt LaFleur said that in his press conference, didn't he? At the end of the season, I believe.
He's doing the same thing.
And he's like, obviously something has to change. I do think it was also the right call to keep him, though, for all the reasons that you just said. What's interesting about Green Bay, and it's something I talk about quite a bit, is we were just talking about the reactionary decisions of ownership, right? Green Bay doesn't have an owner. They're owned by the community, and they have a board of directors, and the president reports to the board. Everybody reports to the board. And because of that, they get to operate in a very unique way. They don't have the pressures of an owner owner who is feeling the pressure because social media is telling him this, that, the other. It has allowed that organization, and this is the reason why I love them so much, to be so incredibly stable and to have perennial success. When you look back, especially during my lifetime, the last 30 years or so, it's really unique, and it's because of the way that they're built, and it's because of the way that they are not owned by one single family or one single person, and it's tremendously. I think it's just the picture of stability. And it's so funny because I talk to guys in that building, whether it be personnel or coaches or whatever, and the way that they do things is still very much born out of what Vince Lombardi instilled back in the 60s. And that's still how they operate. And so when you look at how this organization behaves, I just have an intrinsic and inherent trust in their decision-making skills because so much thought is put into it. Now, it doesn't necessarily make them the most popular when there are issues. Like, I think the conversation around Matt LaFleur this year was completely valid, but I also think that that's how you arrive at the ultimately right decision, and you don't do anything too reactionary, is because you have this structure that allows you to behave that way.
Connor likes to remind me that you can always trust the Packers to get to the NFC Championship game and blow it.
I was going to say, beyond that, although, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not ready this now that this rivalry is reborn too. I mean, I do think there's a unique pressure on Matt LaFleur now.
It does make it one of, if not the most intriguing divisions in the game now. It's box office for everyone, for neutrals as well as fans.
Yes.
But I wonder, Carmen, to your point about reactionary decision-making, was that driven at a certain level by what we saw in Chicago? Because if you get the right person in place, you really can go from worst to first that quickly. In Chicago, to your point, also hasn't been great at making decisions, getting the coach, quarterback, GM cycle wrong time and time again. They turned the dial in the correct way, it seems, this time.
It's so funny because this is the least dramatic offseason the Bears are I've had since I've been in covering the league. They're so boring, and I love it though. What's really it's funny because guys like Ben Johnson, I mean, you look at what Mike Grable did this year in New England. You also what Liam Cohen did in Jacksonville, also a first-time head coach. First-time head coaches turning franchises around in 1 year is screwing over the rest of coaches or the expectations, because
Dave Canales and Mike McDonald taking 2 years. What's up with you guys?
I know, exactly.
So slow.
We debated last night, and we said there's a long list of coaches that could have made a genuine case for Coach of the Year last night. It was probably one of them.
Yes.
It was the most hotly contested award last night.
I think so too. And I honestly spent all offseason kind of prepping Bears fans to be just be patient, because this is not an easy process. This is a long process. When Ben Johnson took over in Detroit as OC, in 2022, they went 1-6 and it didn't look good, but then they finished on it. I was rationalizing it so incredibly much. And then I was like, well, I couldn't have been more wrong. This didn't. The thing is, though,
week to week, I was going 8 wins, 8 and 9 is progress.
It's progress.
9 wins, winning season. That's progress.
I predicted 8 and 9. I was and I would be happy with 8 and 9 for them. That would have been a drastic improvement. And what's interesting is, Bears were very stressful watch this year, right? Because for 3.5 quarters, they did not look like a good team. And there still are some major deficiencies, I think, on the defensive side of the ball that were covered up by all the takeaways, which you can live like that in the short term, but it's really hard to really build a defense and count on those takeaways going forward. So there's still a lot of work to be done in Chicago, but it just seems like Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson are on the exact same page. And I have faith going forward that, you have the quarterback, you have the head coach. The head coach works well with the GM. Ownership is kind of getting out of their way, giving them resources. I'm
just leave it alone.
Who is she? Who are these Bears? I don't know them. But
that's what they say in Chicago now. That's the next big decision.
That's the next big decision, and hopefully they don't hightail it to Indiana. I can't imagine they do that, but we'll see.
Especially because, Brian and Craig and Kieran, who are off camera here, are all Giants fans, and I love ripping them out about the fact that the Giants are one of those teams that aren't even based in their home city, never mind their home state. So
yes,
I don't want that.
No, I don't.
Not to be taken away from me.
And I don't know how much you guys know the geography of all of it, but where the Bears practice at Hallis Hall is in Lake Forest. Lake Forest is essentially on the Wisconsin-Illinois border.
I did my J1. I worked in a golf club in Lake Forest. Would you believe? Yeah, I worked at Conway Farms.
Well, so you know how far north it is. And so I'm if you build a stadium in Gary, Indiana, which is the south end of all of this, you're going to, 2.5 hours are going to separate the Bears stadium from where they practice? That doesn't seem right. And they're going to be in essentially 2 different states.
And it seems like it would be sacrilege to take them out of Hallis Hall as well.
I know you couldn't do that. I don't think the McCaskey family will will not allow that. There's just no way. And you don't want to. There's so much history built up there. The Bears being the founding franchise of the league is just, it's taken so seriously, and you want to do right by it. And the Caskies want to do right by it. So they'll figure it out. I think they end up in Arlington Heights.
As much as we're giving love to the NFC North, it was the West that proved to be the best this season. I mean, it was such a strong division.
Yes.
Was it 312 plus winning teams?
Yes.
Record teams, should I say. Do you see any of the NFC North teams challenging that next season? And if so, can we ask you to put your neck on the line and make a pick? Are we going to stay neutral?
No, it's interesting. I mean, again, I just talked about how much faith I have in the Bears, right? I just talked about how I always intrinsically trust the Packers to get there. I do think that if the Lions can stay healthy, that they still have so much talent, and Minnesota has a lot of talent. They just have still the biggest question mark. So I can't in good conscience think that that's going to work out for them. But I look at the Seattle Seahawks and what we were talking about when it comes to before this season, where we were like, what are they doing with all the moves they were making? You know, they pay Sam Darnold, and you're like, was that really an upgrade? They get Cooper Kupp, and he's like, is he washed? And then you're like,
hindsight is 2020, isn't it?
Hindsight's 2020, because now you're like, oh, that's what they were doing. I get it now. And it's essentially the same recipe that the Patriots are following too, which is get a good quarterback, have a dominating defense, and that can take you wherever you need to go in this league. And now it took them all the way to the Super Bowl. So if we could have those conversations about Seattle and they end up having a season like this, then I have to think that that's on the table for any of the teams in the NFC North.
Do we have an NFC winner in the Super Bowl this year?
I do. I'm thinking it's the Seahawks. I'm thinking it's the Seahawks. They're the most complete team. The defense is just insane. I think that the Patriots are just a little bit more volatile. They'll get there. The Patriots are back, guys. I don't know if anybody wants to hear that, but they are. But I think it's going to be Seattle.
Having waited so long for the Bears to get good, it's disgusting. It's just not fair. You can't do that. It's you got to suffer like a real fan base.
You got to suffer. You got to suffer.
Carmen Vitali, absolute pleasure talking to you again. Thank you so much for joining us on the Irish NFL Show.
Thanks.